Good day, sir. Good day, classmates. I am Myla Adatan, and together with my group mates, Danica Epistola, Feby Lapitan, and Jasmine Joy Venturina, we are going to report about biodiversity and the health society. What is biodiversity? Biodiversity refers to the variety of life found in an ecosystem. It is a combination of two words. The biological means life and diversity means variety. Biodiversity is the variation among living organisms, the ecosystem in which they are part of it, and the diversity between species and species. It also includes the interdependence and relationship between and among the organisms found in a particular ecosystem and environment. Biodiversity is highly important because it caters to most of our needs. It provides us with food, water, shelter, medicine, and energy. And name a few. Biology is the study of all living organisms, plants, animals, and microorganisms, and how they interact with each other and their environment. It examines the structure, the classification, function, growth, origin, evolution, and distribution of all living things. Biodiversity, abbreviated from the terms biological and diversity, encompasses the variety of life forms found at all scales of biological organization, ranging from genes to species to ecosystem. The greatest biodiversity is found in the tropical regions of the world, particularly among the tropical rainforests and coral reefs. Biodiversity is increased by genetic change and evolutionary processes and reduced by the habitat destruction, population decline, and extinction. There is a growing recognition that the level of biodiversity is an important factor in influencing the resilience of ecosystems to disturbance. Biodiversity is a complex term that includes not only the variety of different animals, but also the difference between animals of the same species and between the ecosystem. There are three types of diversity: the generic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. Genetic diversity is the variety of genes in different organisms, such as plants, animals, and microorganisms. For example, in humans, some genes express different characteristics. In siblings, some may have straight hair, while some may have curly hair. Plants of the same species may show different colors of flowers. You can also see numerous breeds of dogs that have different characteristics but under the same species. This is because there are differences in the DNA sequences of individual organisms. Species diversity. According to the biological species concept of Mayer and Ashlock, species refers to a group of individual organisms of similar characteristics that are capable of interbreeding. Species diversity pertains to diversity in the number of species. This mainly involves species richness, the number of species in a particular area measured by the number of individuals or biomass. The species evenness or the relative abundance of a species in a specific area, determined as high or low. Let's go now to the ecological or community diversity. Ecological or community diversity is a variety of ecosystems or habitats in a given region, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica. The ecosystem is the complex of living organisms, biotic factor or the physical environment, and the abiotic factors and the richness, interrelatedness. Ecological diversity can be defined as the variety of different habitats, communities, and ecological processes. A biological community is defined by the species that occupy a particular area and the interactions between those species. A biological community, together with its associated physical environment, is termed an ecosystem. Partly due to the complexity, biodiversity can be extremely difficult to measure. However, there are a few key indicators of biodiversity that we can accurately and efficiently monitor. For coral reefs, these indicators includes seafloor diversity, seagrass, mangroves, seabirds, species of conservation concerned, and species richness, and the community structure of hard corals on the GBR. These are the examples of an ecosystem. Let's go now to some terms related to biodiversity. The first one is the endemic species. Endemic species exist solely in a particular area. Some endemic species can only be found in a particular country, region, or continent. The Philippines is known to be one of the world's hotspots for endemic species. Some endemic species in our country include tamarao, tarsier, and the Luzon hornbill. The next one is biodiversity hotspots. Biodiversity hotspots are those regions or countries with rich biodiversity but are under threats of depletion and loss of species. According to Conservation International, there are two criteria to be considered to qualify as a biodiversity hotspot. First one is the region of or country must have at least 1,500 species of endemic vascular plants. And the second one, it must have 30% or less of its original natural vegetation. The Philippine archipelago is considered a biodiversity hotspot. The last one is the ecosystem services. Ecosystem services refers to the benefits that the ecosystem provides to humans through the transformation of resources, the land, water, vegetation, and etc., into a flow of essential goods and services. It can be categorized into four main types: the provisioning services, regulating services, supporting services, and cultural services.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, classmates. I'm Danica Bianca, and my report is all about biodiversity loss. Biodiversity loss refers to the depletion or reduction of biological diversity due to various threats to living organisms and their habitats. In the last 40 years, we have already lost more than half of the world's biodiversity. Loss of biodiversity can be brought about by natural causes such as destruction of habitats, natural phenomena like earthquake, typhoon, and etc., and invasive species, or by man-made causes like pollution, overexploitation, and even human overpopulation. The United Nations 2019 reported that around 1 million species of plants and animals are now facing extinction. It is prediction that by 2050, half of the world's species will be extinct. Biodiversity loss, also called loss of biodiversity. A decrease in biodiversity within a species, an ecosystem, a given geographic area, or Earth as a whole. Biodiversity or biological diversity is a term that refers to the number of genes, species, individual organisms within a given species, and biological communities within a defined geographic area, ranging from the smallest ecosystem to the global biosphere. A biological community is an interact group of various species in a common location. Likewise, biodiversity loss describe the decline in the number, genetic variability, and variety of species and biological communities in a given area. The loss in variety of life can lead to a breakdown in the functioning of the ecosystem where decline has happened. The International Union or Conservation of Nature or IUCN is the global authority on the natural world's status and the measures needed to safeguard it. They formulated the so-called IUCN red list categories that define the risk of extinction of known species. The number 1 is extinct. The last individual of the species has died. Example of this one is golden tooth and Japanese sea lion. Number 2 is the extinct in the wild. It is known to only survive in cultivation and cannot be found in the wild or its expected habitat anymore. Example is Alagus curassow and Hawaiian crow. Number 3 is critically endangered, when the species is considered to be extremely high risk of extinction. Example is the Philippine eagle and tamaraw. Number 4, endangered, when the species is considered to be at a very high risk of extinction. Example is Calamajan deer, Visayas hornbill. Number 5, vulnerable, when the species is considered to be high risk of extinction. Example is Mulave and dugong. 6, near threatened. The species is close to qualifying for threatened category in the near future. Example is bull shark and soft cauliflower collar. Number 7, least concern. The species is widespread and abundant. Example is Conus berberi and giant reed. Number 8, data deficient. There is inadequate information to make a risk assessment of the species. Example of this one is Vicente's poison frog and cherry palm. And the last one is not evaluated. The species has not been evaluated yet. So what is the causes of biodiversity loss? This is the causes of biodiversity loss. Number 1 is the habitat alteration and destruction. Loss of habitat due to alteration and destruction has a massive impact to biodiversity. Factors such as deforestation, urbanization, fires, and land conservation impacts. 85% of all species under threatened or endangered category. Some major repercussions of habitat loss to species are relocation, predation, starvation, or even death. In the Philippines, one of our endemic species, the Philippine eagle, is critically endangered due to loss of habitat brought about deforestation. Sea cows or dugongs are also losing their habitats due to coastal development. The number 2 is population. Population is a condition wherein there is an abnormal increase in the amount of natural occurring compounds such as heavy metals, nitrites, cyanates, agricultural wastes, sewage, pathogens, and gases, to name a few. High concentration of these substances make for unfavorable environmental conditions, leading to diseases and even death of organisms. Oil spills in bodies of water cause the death of marine organisms. Air pollution kills birds and insects and causes various respiratory and skin diseases in human and other animals. Waste such as plastic that are improperly disposed of in ocean cause the death of many marine organisms. 3 is overexploitation. Is defined as the excessive or unsuitable consumption of resources. Some examples of overexploitation include illegal logging, which causes the decline of hardwood trees, overfishing of the endemic fish tawis found in Taal Lake, resulted in the decrease in its population and eventual endangerment. Number 4 is global warming and climate change. The gradual increase in temperature also poses a major threat to biodiversity. Melting of icebergs in the polar regions lead to sea level rise and loss of habitat of animals such as polar bears. Drastic changes in climate change, extreme weather conditions, grass and forest fires are some of the impact that we are currently experiencing. Number 5 is illegal poaching and wildlife trade. Illegal trade of flora and fauna is largely rampant on a global scale. This practice attributes not only to the engagement of some species but also to extinction to some. Animals found in the wild are poached to the sold as exotic pets or for allied medical purposes. African animals have been killed for their ivory tusks. Plants are also sold at high prices as being rare or hard to find items for plant collectors. Number 5 is diseases. Some of species also under threat due to diseases brought by climate change and as an adverse result of various human activities. An example is a decline in amphibian pollution because of a fungal disease, which later resulted in the extinction of the golden tooth. And the last one is the introduction of invasive species. Invasive species has been identified as the second largest threat to biodiversity after habitat loss. Invasive alien species, or IAS, are those species introduction, whether by accident or international, to a place which is not their natural habitat. Their introduction could become a threat as they may outcompete the native species for food and other resources, which may lead to the decline of pollution or extinction of the latter. Introduction of IAS are usually related to human interests, mostly being introduced for economic reasons. An example of IAS is the water hiking, commonly found in rivers and swamps. This plant species is native to South America and has rapidly invaded tropical regions. It can grow up to add 1 meter long and spread rapidly, causing oxygen depletion, killing fishes such as what happened in Laguna de Bay. Other examples of invasive alien species found in the Philippines are tilapia, Brazilian mahogany, knifefish, and the golden apple snail.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, classmates. So, my name is Febby, and my report is all about the GMOs. So, what is GMOs? Genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, are organisms with foreign genes incorporated to exhibit desirable characteristics that do not occur naturally through mating and natural recombination. Key 2008. GMOs have been engineered in the laboratory through genetic modification. Genomes are altered by including or inserting genes from unrelated organisms such as bacteria, viruses, insects, and animals to achieve desirable traits or characteristics. Some benefits of GMOs are increased crop yield, pesticide resistance, enhanced nutrients composition, tolerance to stress, faster maturity, and medical benefits. So this is the example of genetically modified organism. So what are the process of making genetically modified organisms? The first one is identification of a trait of interest. First, scientists identify the trait that they want to be expressed. Then they find an organism that already has that trait in their gene. The second one is the isolation of gene. After determining the trait, the scientists either isolate that gene that expresses the desired trait or copy it from the organism. Next is the gene insertion. Once they isolate the gene, it is inserted to the organism that will be modified. The inserted gene will not change the other traits already present in that organism. So number 4 is the GMO is allowed to grow. The modified organism is allowed to grow in laboratory conditions. When it grows successfully in the laboratory, subsequent procedures such as field test, biosafety assessments, and economic feasibility are conducted before the product is released for commercial use or consumption. So, uses of genetically modified organism. The first one is the Bt cotton. Inserted with a gene from the bacterium Bacillus thuringiensis, which produces a natural insecticide for bollworm called the Bt toxin. Bt cotton has demonstrated a higher yield compared to non-Bt or non-Bt cotton. The second one is the golden rice. So the golden rice created by inserting a gene from the Daffodil and Bacterium Erwinia urdivora to enable the accumulation of beta-carotene in the rice and the sperm for vitamin A synthesis. The third one is the GM mosquitoes. developed to express SM1 protein preventing the entry of malaria's parasite Plasmodium into the mosquito's gut-breaking life cycle of the parasite. 4 is the xenotransplantation, the process of using animal organs, tissues, and cells for human needs. This addresses the concern when it comes to shortage in an organ donors for transplants. So as you can see, we have here the pig, which is the donor, and the human is the recipient. So, the skin of the pig will use to the skin of the human, which having a burn. So, the kidney is for the kidney failure. So, number 5, glowfish. A GM zebrafish inserted with a gene from jellyfish to express bioluminescence. It was initially produced to detect water pollution but was later on commercialized as a pet. Let's move forward. Risks and downside of genetically modified organisms. First one, ecosystem risks. GMOs pose a threat of potentially becoming invasive species if they become unregulated. Many GMOs are known to grow fast and increase rapidly. Genetic contamination or interbreeding. GMOs may interbreed with wild types, which can lead to lost trait for future generations. Conversely, wild types can inherit the modified traits, which can disrupt the natural ecosystem where it belongs. Adverse effects on health. GMOs may cause adverse effects on health risks to humans. Some GMOs were claimed to cause allergic reactions and other risks if consumed. Social acceptance. Many are still hesitant about consumption and development of GMOs. Social acceptance will also determine the success of the GMO if people will not consume or use the product. The development of such technology will be deemed useless. Economic issue and access. Investors are expecting huge return of investment in the development of GMOs, thus making it expensive and accessible to only select few who can afford the product. Animal welfare. Animal welfare issues are raised especially in GM animals such as the GM pig and other animals used for xenotransplantation, as well as the use of animals such as rats for trial testing in laboratories. Pest and antibiotic resistance. Pets may later evolve to develop resistance to pest-killing GMOs, which would render the GMO useless later on. It can also contribute the growing problem of antibiotic resistance. Policies and politics on GMOs. Here are some terms related to the different policies and political standpoints regarding genetically modified organisms. First, biosafety is defined as the condition to which potential harm, damage, or threats caused by introduction of biotechnology, international or not, is under manageable or acceptable level. Risk assessment is the process of evaluating or identifying the potential hazards or damage biotechnology can cause the humans, animals, and the environment. It also includes the development of mitigation measures toward those risks. The Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety is an international protocol that regulates the production and use of genetically modified organisms to ensure biosafety. This protocol, an international agreement that aims to ensure safe handling, transport, and consumption of living GMOs while also taking into account its risks to the human health. The countries enjoying this protocol are obliged to implement its provisions. Next one, Executive Order Number 430. Promulgate a system of biosafety regulation that are used in the Philippines. The said regulation was already in existence since 1990 and known to be the first in the world. National Committee on Biosafety of the Philippines is the government agency that's in charge of the implementation of various regulations related to biotechnology assessment, commercialization of GMOs, and labeling of GMO products. And that's all our report. Thank you.